Daniela.
Gabby.
Grace.
Eli.
Awesome. All right, well, my name is Eric, and thank you guys for having me here today. So I guess really quick, the STEM group at Pally, you just want to tell me a brief, like, a minute intro? Just like what's...
Sure. So we have a set of weekly speakers from a variety of different STEM fields and different points in their careers, and we also like go on field trips to like certain areas in Stanford and volunteer at local science fairs, things like that.
Yeah, we're trying to like engage students into like STEM opportunities and like volunteering stuff. Like,
Cool. So like very engaged STEM.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
to like
fun.
expose students to the different possible
Yeah.
careers you can do with STEM.
It's
Cool.
like 2 parts.
Awesome. Well, good for you guys for getting into that stuff. Definitely one of the challenges I find is how to be a scientist, but also be very engaged in my community. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Thank you guys for having me. It was a little interesting to find my way around this place. You guys got quite the campus here, but it's a good spot. So yeah, my name is Eric Wilburn. I grew up, does anybody know what that is? What mountain that is? Any guesses?
Is it in California?
It's in Washington State.
Ah. I still don't know.
I can't.
We don't specialize in geography.
So this yeah, very much. I didn't know many mountains when I was growing up. This is the only one I knew really. This is Mount Rainier.
That's what it is.
I'm from up in Olympia, Washington. Grew up there, born and raised. Beautiful place. Spent a lot of time in the outdoors, a lot of time hiking, and a lot of time around lawyers because both my mom and dad were lawyers, and they both worked for the state of Washington. My dad on environmental stuff, and my mom on health care and policy. So, what did I do after high school? And just give you guys an idea of what I'm doing here. I'm just going to kind of give you a brief blow through of my life to this juncture, and then open it up to you guys for questions, because I would much rather have you guys ask questions than me just talk for a half hour. So I went to Tufts University as an undergraduate, and I studied environmental engineering, and my college essay that I wrote was all about wanting to be the voice of science. So kind of be the guy that can talk about science, not necessarily be the guy, not necessarily be the guy that's doing the science, but be the guy that's the voice of the science. So that was kind of my goal going in, and I really ended up just doing science. I only took engineering classes. I literally did not take one English class or writing class my entire undergraduate career, which wasn't great. So I came out of undergrad with a very, very technical background in environmental engineering. So what did I do? Because I really wanted to get away from technical stuff, I joined the Peace Corps. So this is me in Mozambique. And you'll notice, I guess, what are some things you guys notice about this picture? Just off the top of your head.
You were in a dress.
I'm wearing a dress. That's a good thing to notice. There's an interesting story behind that. And where am I wearing a dress?
In class.
In class. And do those students, how old do you guys think those students are?
15.
14, 15? And then you're right about on. And then on the board, can anybody see like what that is? I don't know if you guys are too far away.
Yeah.
It's pretty blurry.
Pretty
Is
blurry.
it like a square on a graph?
Yeah, so it's a force diagram. So
Oh, got it.
I was a physics teacher at a secondary school in Mozambique for 2 years, and today, or this day, I wore a dress because I bet one of my students that the U.S. would beat Portugal in the World Cup, and we tied.
Oh.
So we both had to wear a dress, and the day that we were supposed to wear a dress, he didn't come to school.
Oh,
So I was the
my.
only one wearing the dress. But he did, to his credit, the next day he came to school and he wore a dress. So it was a good little fun. But I largely spent 2 years kind of out in a rural community in Mozambique. I taught science. I also, similar to what you guys do with science outreach, I was national coordinator of the science fair, which was a national project where we held science fairs in kind of each district, and the winners went to a provincial fair, and the winners of that went to a national fair. And I think my year we had 110 out of 127 districts in Mozambique participate. So it's like a big science outreach project. But yeah, in a nutshell, Peace Corps was me really kind of getting off the beaten path, and I'd love for you guys to ask me any questions you want about Peace Corps. So after Peace Corps, I decided I wanted to kind of get back into engineering to a certain extent, but more on a community level. So my work up to November, and then a big thing changed, but up to November last year, I worked largely on water and sanitation in low-income countries. So this is me in Kenya this past summer, working on designing a container-based toilet, which is essentially where you poop, and then it gets captured in a container. The container gets taken to a treatment facility overland. Instead of here in the US, how do we transport our poop?
Pipes.
Sewers, pipes, yeah, water, right? Like it all happens underground. So we were looking at a different system because it costs a lot of money to lay pipe and put in a sewerage network. So we were trying this out. It allowed me to do some interesting kind of design and some engineering, and it was a kind of a good experience after my first year. And I guess I should say I'm currently at Stanford, and this is a part of my master's of science in environmental engineering. And I'm realizing in my transitions it wasn't the best here. So this is kind of me doing community-based research, but I also work for an NGO on the side that does nature conservation and rural development in Mozambique. So completely different from what my environmental engineering studies and research is. I've been doing work on how to get communities to conserve, to kind of value their land and conserve their land and be an active partner in conservation efforts. So we work on Mount Namuli, which is this mountain. It's the second highest mountain in Mozambique. And I kind of do that as a side gig to my research. And all of this to say that in November, I changed tracks again and decided to completely stop my toilet research and shift my focus to working on essentially the stuff that I've been doing in Mozambique. So this is the Stanford Natural Capital Project, which is essentially trying to study how we incentivize rural communities to protect their natural resources and practice sustainable natural resource usage. So essentially working with communities to say, all right, you guys have this beautiful forest, and right now, because you're trying to survive, you're cutting up in this natural forest to sell the wood or to open up an agricultural plot or whatnot. So we're trying to come in and say, okay, are there some ways by which we can give you another economic option, like let's say producing honey in a way that's sustainable, so you don't have to go and cut trees that we really value for biodiversity and for their ability to mitigate climate change. Throwing a lot of buzzwords out there. And I realize I'm moving pretty quickly, so please, if you have any questions, stop me. And then obviously at the end we'll have tons of time for questions. So I've shifted again, and I'm now working with the Stanford National Capital Project. And after the election of our wonderful president, I decided to get another degree in public policy. So this is kind of coming full circle. So I entered into my undergraduate essay was saying I want to be the voice for science. So now I kind of came around full circle and said, all right, well, we have a senator, I believe he's from Florida, who's introduced legislation to abolish the EPA totally, to get rid of the EPA. So all of what's happened in politics has kind of motivated me to take more of an active role in engaging in politics and policy. And you guys are also, have this potential to be in a unique position where you have a lot of experience with science, and you guys are probably really good at science. But if you're well spoken, and not even if you're well spoken, but if you want to be more of the voice of science and kind of be able to deliver it to people in a way that makes sense to them, it's really important right now. I don't know, have you guys heard in the news about all of, people not believing in science? Like base science, and science is really hard, right? It's really confusing, it's really intricate. To do it right, it takes a lot of kind of deep knowledge. So the challenge of people who are more the voice of science is, okay, well, how do we take this 50-page study and condense it down to 3 sentences that get across the main points that people can get on board with? So that's kind of what I'm hoping to do with this public policy degree. And I realized in this presentation I jumped around a fair amount, but all this to say is that I've jumped tracks many times, right? But I've always had this guiding vision of ensuring a sustainable future for humans and our environment. So that's kind of been my driving force, but I've really bounced around a lot in kind of what exactly I'm doing, what research I'm doing, or what work I'm doing. And I've oftentimes felt kind of pressure from external forces, from my parents or from colleagues or from other students to kind of stick to one thing and not change and just fully commit to that. And I found that for me, it's been much more productive to kind of, when an opportunity presents itself, take that opportunity. Like Peace Corps was not something that my parents really wanted me to do. But I ended up doing it because it was interesting, it was totally different, and it's now given me a lot of new perspective on kind of the world and how the world works. So, before we get into questions, I just kind of want to say that your vision and all your guys' visions can take many different forms. But as long as you have kind of some guiding thought that really inspires you, that really motivates you to get up every day, and I didn't know what that was when I was your age, so don't be worried at all if you don't know it, and it takes a long time to figure out. But feel free to explore and bounce around, and when a door opens, even if it's a little bit of a risk, I think walking through it as often can be really, really interesting and exciting. All right, so I buzzed through a ton of info there. So if you guys have any questions on my undergraduate career, post-college, Peace Corps, anything, yeah?
So for the Peace Corps, did you get to choose to be a physics teacher, or was it kind of like assigned? And did you get to choose the location and all that?
Great question. So when I applied, I wanted to be a water engineer in Latin America, and they came back and said, well, we have a position open for you to be a physics teacher in Mozambique, in Africa. So I said, sure, let's give it a go. So that's the way it was. It's changed now. Now when you apply to the Peace Corps, you can ask for a specific country and a specific sector. So you can do health, you can do education, you can do environmental education, you can do, I think, small business development. So it's a bunch of different sectors. So it's changed a little bit.
Did you need experience? Did you need experience?
Just need an undergraduate degree. That's all you need. Yeah, I was desperately not experienced in being a teacher, so it was quite the learning curve.
Did they give you like a little education to be able to do like physics teaching?
Yeah, so we spend the first 10 weeks of Peace Corps in country, working with language trainers. So half the day we're in language classes. So I learned Portuguese. That's the national language in Mozambique. And then the other half of the day you spend learning how to be a teacher. So it's a 10-week crash course, and it honestly took me the entire first year I was there was just learning how to speak Portuguese and be a teacher. And then the second year I could actually be a teacher. Yeah.
Are you like incorporating like your public policy like studies into like what you're doing? Because like I'm super interested in like the intersection between computer science and public policy and things like cyber policy and like cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And like I want to go into like policy making for like the government and stuff with regards to like tech. So like how are you incorporating that into like your masters and stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the first step is actually taking the classes to get the degree. So I'm formally enrolled in the Masters of Arts in Public Policy. So I'm taking a lot of classes in economics, in politics, in kind of political science. So a lot of spaces where I have no experience in this. Really good ways to get involved are to just keep tabs of kind of what the discussions are around these issues like cybersecurity and whatnot, and see how they get politicized. So like for the environment right now, like the environment, like, you know, Ronald Reagan, who was one of the most conservative presidents ever, or was it? It was Nixon, excuse me, Nixon, one of the most conservative presidents ever. You know, he created the EPA. So the environment didn't used to be a political issue, but now it's very much so seen as like a liberal agenda, protecting the environment. So it's interesting to look at cybersecurity, where groups fall. If conservatives say we want more cybersecurity, you know, and cybersecurity is something that hopefully is not going to be politicized, right? Hopefully everybody cares about that. But kind of looking at what the leaders, what our president, what our senators are saying about cybersecurity, and then it's hard because you want to have the scientific background in cybersecurity, but looking for opportunities to get involved in groups that are, I guess, in the discussions at the government level, which I'm not quite sure what those are for cybersecurity, but I bet if you just looked up cybersecurity policy, there's some advocacy groups who are pushing for more cybersecurity or less cybersecurity at the government level. So yeah, that's the best.
So is your goal more so to go and like join or like help out with an advocacy group rather than actually go into like government or politics?
That's a really good question. So I think, I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. It'll kind of depend on where things lie. The other thing that I've been really considering lately is there's like a third option, which is going to work for a group that isn't considered environmentally friendly and trying to change it from within. So that's something I hadn't really considered until recently. But you know, most people, they graduate from a public policy degree and they go work for an NGO or a nonprofit that is trying to make noise about the environment, or they go work for the government and they try to pass legislation. But the other option is, you know, I could go work for a big gas company and work for their environmental group and try to push them to have better environmental standards. So it's kind of interesting, right? Because it's like you're working for the devil, but at the same time, is that a way to actually create change, is to make change from within instead of change from the outside? So it's definitely, I'm not sure yet. There's a lot of stuff up in the air that I'm considering. That's a good question.
But do the like environmental like sectors of those big companies, like do they actually do anything, or are they just like for show?
It's a good question. So, I mean, now they have to, right? Because the EPA says you have to meet these certain regulations. You have to submit to us these reports. And I think the key for these groups is they're all about money, right? I mean, that's everything in our country is about money. So the question is, can you make an economic argument that it's worth protecting, that it's worth taking action X? So for example, you know, if you're working with a big petroleum company and they're deciding whether to put, you know, the pipeline is a big deal right now up in the Dakotas. So do you put that pipeline here? Do you put that pipeline here? And an environmentalist would say there shouldn't be a pipeline, right? We don't want any chance of spillage. We don't want anything. But if you're working within these groups and you're an environmentalist, you might say, well, let's at least look how we can minimize the potential for an environmental disaster, even if it costs us a little bit more money, because the long-term economic costs that we'll have to pay out via litigation, so if somebody sues us or whatever, it's worth us investing a little bit more now to be safer. So you can do kind of small tweaks from the inside, but obviously you're not going to get a petroleum company to stop producing oil. So it's kind of fighting the little battles. Yeah.
What's your day-to-day schedule like?
Good question. So today I woke up at 6 o'clock and I had a meeting with our partner NGO in Mozambique from 6 to 7 because they're 10 hours ahead. And then I spent 3 hours working on our theory of change for our project in Mozambique. And then I spent about an hour working on my final term paper for my treatment processes class, which is one of my last classes I need to take for my environmental engineering degree. Here with you guys now. And then I'll go in and I have a economics analysis of law class this afternoon. After that, I'll do a little bit more work, probably on a problem set for my economic analysis of law class. And then I'm going to go play ultimate frisbee in the city with some friends. So it's quite a mix of like some NGO Mozambique work, some class work, and then I mix in some research and whatnot as well. But usually I'm like bouncing around. I'm doing a lot of different things during the day, which is kind of nice. I'm pretty tired of stuff pretty quickly. Yeah.
So what motivated you to study a little bit about politics when you first majored in pure science in undergrad?
Yeah, I mean, I think I realized that one, I'm not great at pure science. You know, like that's just, there's some people that are really good at pure science and they're really technical and they're really good at that, and I'm not. And then recognizing that, well, there is a role for somebody to play in being able to understand the science, even if we're not producing it, and then being able to translate that to, you know, somebody in South Carolina who has a 10th grade level education. So I think just recognizing that my role might not be the guy down in the lab producing experiments, but more so the guy talking with politicians and saying, well, we've got this data that says we should really be doing this, and here's why we should be doing it and how it works. So I guess just kind of trying to find my role in the whole process, and it's continually developing. And I'm only 26, so it's a lot of time to figure out where exactly I lie.
Do you think like doing projects like working with the people in Mozambique and doing studies at the same time, you think that is beneficial in different aspects of your education?
Yeah. I mean, community engagement, like you guys said, you do some community engagement stuff. Like that to me has been by far the most rewarding things that I do. You know, because it's immediate. You get that immediate kickback of oh, like somebody's engaging with me that I wouldn't otherwise engage with, and they're opening my world in a lot of ways, and I'm opening up their world in some ways. And I think whenever you can do research with a community, or do research where maybe you're studying a community of people or whatever, but you're also working with them to deliver something. I'm a part of a program right now that really works on how do we get academics more engaged in community engaged scholarship is what we call it. So essentially where you're working with a community to do some sort of research, but what's really important in that is that you're not just taking data from them, you're also providing them with something. You know, they're benefiting from it. But I think Peace Corps is a great place. It was a great place for me to start, because that was just, I wasn't doing any research. I was literally just there, and I was just existing in this space. And it's a really interesting opportunity to just be way out there on your own, and just kind of like, you end up depending on people for your happiness that you never thought you'd depend on. Like I hung out more with a 35-year-old woman, a 9-year-old, and a 2-year-old than I ever thought I would in my entire life. Like that was how I spent like half of my time in Mozambique, with just this one like really funny, cool family. And yeah, it's a unique experience for sure. Yeah.
So you mentioned before that you didn't like take any English courses in your undergrad, and but now you're going away from just pure sciences.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of writing and how have you looked at that?
Yeah, it's a learning curve for sure. Fortunately, I've done a fair amount of writing for proposals, for grants and stuff with my NGO, so that has helped. But for example, I got the lowest grade in the class on my first assignment in economic analysis of law, and then on the second one I got the highest grade. So like, you can do it, I guess is what I'm saying. Like writing it takes practice, but it also, it depends on, whatever sector you're writing in, there's kind of a style and format that people want, and once you learn that, and you kind of have that, bit of an understanding of what the structure is, it generally comes, you can do it, and it's hard, like I'm not good at writing. I have to spend more time on it than probably most other people do, but it's totally possible to do it. That being said, if you can take English classes, take English classes. Yeah.
So is your master's thesis going to be on like a policy relating to like the environment or like environmental policy or something like that?
Yeah, I'm hoping it's actually going to be related to policies around community-based conservation areas. So the whole idea being that if you find a really pristine environment where there's only communities and indigenous peoples that are kind of the threat to their own environment, which is an interesting concept, but then you can empower them to be kind of stewards of the land and own the land, and before maybe an oil company comes in and says, hey, we want to drill here. So yeah, probably something around that.
If you go back to your undergraduate years, is there something you would change? Like the courses you chose to take or the...
I would love to do a dual master, or a double major. And it wasn't possible in engineering because the course load is just too extreme. But if I could have found a place to do still do engineering, environmental engineering, but at least maybe do a minor in something a little bit more useful to the real world. Like I'm not sure if it's policy or what that would be, but that would be ideal.
I was wondering, how important or useful do you think like speech and communication skills are in life and work?
I mean, it's everything. Like really, I mean, so that's not true. You can be the person who's down in the lab, who's working on stuff, and be incredibly valuable. But if you have the speech and communications, that's just gonna put you a step above other people. So, I mean, the more you can just put yourself out there in weird situations, like talking, it doesn't really matter what it is, just like, there's a lot of interesting opportunities to just be in the face of people, and like I did something I've never done before, an open mic night. I did a poetry reading, which was like, it's pretty weird and interesting, but like something I've never done before. It made me like be in front of people talking poetry. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's an open mic night comedy thing on Friday at Stanford too.
There you go. Yeah.
That's terrifying. I was like, how could we be engaged, or do you know of any like programs locally or in the Bay Area that we could do something?
In what space? What are you interested in?
Let's say like environmental or something.
That's a good point. This is something that I've been really trying to look into more, because I would love to get more into kind of working in my local community on some issues. With the environment, I'll have to get back to you guys. I'll see what I can find. It's a little hard here because the environmental groups are actually so big. It's harder to find a kind of a good fit where you can just come in, X hours a week and help out. But I've also been thinking about doing like Boys and Girls Club, something like that, being a mentor for a student, or just in general being a mentor for students. And if you guys want to just spitball ideas off me as you're applying to schools, or where are you guys in the process right now?
We're seniors.
So we already applied,
We're
yeah.
juniors.
Okay.
Oh, I'm
Oh, yeah.
a freshman.
Freshman.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, you guys like you have my email now. If you ever want to just shoot me like, hey, I'm thinking about this program, or I'm thinking about this, or here's an essay that I wrote, like, would you mind giving it an edit? Feel free to shoot it my way. I'm happy to help out. And I'll think about what kind of opportunities there are around here. Yeah.
Do you think like being part of like political campaigns is like useful? Like if you want to go into like that.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, I would definitely recommend that all you guys get engaged in kind of your civic side. So, for example, I did not do enough this past election season, and I really regret it. I wish I would have gone out and spent more time maybe canvassing, working with political campaigns, and that can be from as much as like you are spending your summer working with a campaign and you just volunteer all your time to, okay, one weekend this campaign season, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna doorbell, or I'm gonna make some calls for somebody. So definitely, I mean, you can learn a lot. It's really, politics are so interesting and so intricate. And it's definitely good to get on a campaign and like even on a local level, see kind of where the pressures are and what strategies they have for reaching out to certain groups of people within a community.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.